Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the jljpodcast. You're right, you heard that right. It's JLJ now. We've got Lockie Mathewson as a full-time member of the crew now. I'm also, once again, here with my man JVK.
How's it going, guys?
I'm Jackal Emery. I'm also here with Big Lockie Mathewson.
Everyone, how are we?
And today we have got another special guest. We've got Big Jetta Hansen to the crew.
How's it going?
And today we are talking about our team of the decade for the AFL. So what we think our team of the decade is. When you're watching this, make sure you leave a comment if you have any questions or opinions on what we say, because we will answer them in the next video. So, Matho, you'd like to start us off with some questions for our guest?
So we got a couple of questions for old mate Jetta. So we'll start off with Gary Ablett Jr. versus Gary Ablett Sr. Who are you taking?
Well, obviously we've only seen one play in our time, and he was a very good player. But I think from what we've heard about Senior, I think I've got to go with him. It's the amount of goals he kicked.
Yeah, Matt Van Kuyk's input last week, Big Matty VK, just a shout out to the man. He told us that he was a special man, didn't he, VK?
Oh, very wise, Matthew Van Kuyk's opinions, and you got to listen to him. That's what I reckon.
We'll head on to the next one, Jetta.
Yep.
Cyril Rioli, so not Dan Rioli or Willie, Cyril versus Ebets. Who are you taking?
I'm going to have to go with Cyril. Probably didn't play as many games or kick as many goals, but in his time that he's played, he was pretty unstoppable. And yeah, he could win any game for you at any time.
Yeah, Jacko loves him from Hawthorn, don't you, Jacko?
Well, he is my favourite non-Brisbane player, so yeah.
Absolutely.
Next one, Patrick Cripps versus Marcus Bontempelli.
Both very good players, pretty young as well, but I'll go with Paddy Cripps. See, as a young age, he's still polling pretty high in the Brownlow. And he'll still be good next 10 years. See where he goes from there.
Yeah, good pick, mate. That's a very good pick. Darcy Moore, Jordan De Goey, and Brodie Grundy. Who do you sell and you keep two of them?
Who do you trade off?
So Grundy's staying. Probably the best ruckman. Best ruckman can play as a tall midfielder as well. And I'm going to keep Darcy Moore.
Interesting.
Oh.
No injuries, and he's probably could be potentially one of the best in the league.
Yeah, I just got
and then getting rid of Jordan De Goey. He has his moments in big games, which is always helpful, but he's very inconsistent and a few injuries and a few bad incidents outside of footy. And
the off-field incidents. He's wonder how his court date went today. Anyone hear about that? He had a court date today, didn't he?
I didn't hear anything about that.
He was at training today.
Oh, well, maybe it was tomorrow.
They were saying that it was it happened last year, and they've just come out with it now.
Yeah, he's driving suspension.
Yeah.
All right. So last question. VK stuffed this up last week, but
actually did.
You can't always be perfect, boys.
Oh,
I'm like myself.
So we win a flag this year, Jetta, but then you don't play in the finals for the next 10 years, or you wait 10 years and you don't win any finals, but then win back-to-back grand finals after waiting them 10 years. Which one?
Oh, tough one, but I think I'm going to have to go win the granny this year. Especially if it's Collingwood. Gotten so close the last couple of years, finally got good. Missed out 2 years ago. And if you win it this year and then you go into a rebuild and then it won't be too long. I'll go with this year.
That's fair enough.
All right, so we'll get into our team of the decades. Of course, probably a lot of players will be similar in this. But, so I'll kick mine off, starting at the full-back. So first, I've got Shannon Hearn. So might be an interesting choice, but he did average 18 and a half disposals. So all these stats are from the last 10 years, so obviously it's from the last decade, not their entire career. So Shannon Hearn did average 18 and a half touches with 5.4 marks, 2 tackles. Also only had 3.6 spoils a game, which I thought was a little bit low, considering, he does get a lot of balls coming in. He also had 23 Brownlow votes this decade with 2 All-Australians and also that 1 premiership as the captain as well.
Fair enough.
And then I've got Alex Rance, who was probably the first player that goes into every backline in the decade with 5 All-Australians. But he averaged 16.7 disposals a game, 6.2 marks with 2.3 tackles, and this is the big one. He averaged 9.8 spoils a game.
That's
so
massive.
obviously he was, beating all the big players, and of course he always took the number 1 forward every game. He also had 31 Brownlow votes, which I thought was interesting. I expected him to have a little bit more, but yeah, it's fair enough. And then also, of course, the 1 premiership and also only the 1 BNF. And then my final player to end out the back pocket is Sean Burgoyne. So Sean Burgoyne is the only player in this team to have not won an All-Australian this decade, which I thought was pretty interesting considering, I expected him maybe to have won, but his last one was back in 2006, back at Port Adelaide. So he averaged 19.5 disposals with 3.8 marks, 4.1 tackles, only had the 2 spoils. We did have 34 Brownlow votes, and of course he had those 3 premierships.
Good pick.
So,
Pretty good, isn't it? Very good.
Yeah. So, Matho, you like to take us to your fullback?
Yep, my fullback line. Same with Jacko, Sean Burgoyne in the back pocket.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Jacko just mentioned all them stats, so I won't go over them again.
Yeah.
Got Alex Rance at fullback. I think his last decade down at the Tigers was very consistent, shutting down the key forward each week. And then the last back pocket got Corey Enright from the Geelong Cats. I think bit of a lock in the back line.
Yeah, definitely. Jeddah, what about you? As the guest, what is your back line?
So my first one is also Corey Enright.
Mm-hmm.
So 4-time All-Australian in that time. Averaged 20 plus disposals and 6 marks.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously Alex Rance, no doubt. And then my other back pocket, probably not a popular one, is Heath Shaw.
Yeah.
It's a good pick.
Two-time All-Australian, obviously starting at Collingwood, both of them there. Averages 22 disposals and 6 marks.
Ooh, fair enough.
Yeah.
That's fair enough. Someone did mention Heath Shaw to me today, and I thought about him for a little bit. And I'm just like, yeah, he'd be close, but not quite on my team. VK, what about you?
So all my players have been said as predicted already, but Shannon Hearn was close. Didn't end up making it in the end.
Didn't make it? Oh. So you
not on the bench at all?
No, Shannon Hearn did not make it into my team. Heath Shaw is the first back pocket, as Jeddah said. A lot of fans hated him, probably including myself, but you can't deny how good of a player he was coming off that back pocket halfback position. Fullback, Alex Rance, like we all said, it's a lock-in. I don't really see anyone even coming close to that fullback position. And then, as we've said, Corey Enright, for me, one of the most underrated players of this last decade. He doesn't get enough props for what he's done for Geelong.
Mm-hmm. That's fair enough. Matho, you want to take us through your halfback?
Yeah, halfback. I'm surprised VK didn't even have him in his side, to be completely honest with you. Shannon Hearn on the halfback flank. His partner in crime, Jeremy McGovern, sitting next to him at centre halfback.
Yep.
And then the captain of my side, Jacko, your man, Lukey Hodge. I think just the name and the captain's armband around him gives us a bit of a inkling on to how much he brought to the teams that he played for, Hawthorn and Brisbane.
Yeah. That's I guess it leads good into my one with my halfback. Also, I've got Luke Hodge as my skipper, averaging 22.5 disposals with 5.5 marks, had 3.2 tackles. Also had a big 78 Brownlow votes. Of course, he did play a fair bit of midfield time, so obviously he's going to have probably more than the other defenders. But yeah, also only had the one All-Australian, but of course those 3 premierships, all as captain. Also the one Norm Smith and the one best and fairest.
Yeah.
And then same with Mather. I've got McGovern, who averaged 14.8 disposals with 5.8 marks. And the big one, which McGovern, I think, made his name, was his intercept marks. So 3.4 of those marks are intercepted. So
Was that
every second mark.
Mitch McGovern or Jeremy McGovern, bud?
Oh, Jeremy, my bad. That's my bad. Yeah.
That's McGovern, not really known as the backman.
Yeah.
He's stiff to miss out, I think.
Yeah, he was nearly in the team, actually.
Nearly, yeah.
He was close.
Yeah. And even though McGovern hasn't been playing for an entire decade, I think he only started, in 2013 or so. So, obviously he hasn't got as long as the other players. He's only got the 13 Brownlow votes. But in that time, he already has got 4 Australians and that 1 premiership. And then my final halfback player is Corey Enright, which of course have already been said. He did average 22.5 disposals with the 6 marks, with 2.7 tackles. Did have 4 All-Australians in his time, and considering that he retired, halfway through the decade pretty much, pretty impressive. With 27 Brownlow votes in that time. Had that 1 premiership with Geelong and the 2 BNFs. That was pretty impressive. So, Jeddah, what about your halfback?
Obviously going with Shannon Hearn.
Mm-hmm.
Next to him, Jeremy McGovern. Not much to be said about them. Probably, definitely 2 you put in straight away. And obviously Luke Hodge with the 1 All-Australian. He did win 2 Norm Smith, Jacko.
Obviously, it's not in the decade yet. You're going to remember that.
No, 3 premierships, and he is. So when looking for a skipper, I was looking elsewhere, but he did bring a last finishing Brisbane in 2 years to finishing second. And I'm not saying it was all him, but with the leadership of Hodge, I think that's why I put him as a skipper in my team.
That's fair enough, Jed. And VK, you said your halfback?
I'll go now. So Sean Burgoyne, pretty self-explanatory. 3 premierships, one of the best skilled players of this decade, in my opinion.
Silk.
Who's Sean Burgoyne about yourself, VK?
A lot of Sean Burgoyne about myself, actually. Big finals player. I do call myself the Sean Burgoyne, but just doesn't have much skill.
That's fair enough.
And then at centre half back, it was quite closely contested, actually. I had Harry Taylor was close to getting in there, and Michael Hurley's at the back of my mind. He wasn't going to get over the first 2, but he had to get a mention for me, and obviously got Jeremy McGovern as my centre half back. At other half back, I got Lukey Hodge. No explanation needed for this one, and I actually have him as my vice captain, not my captain of my team, just the vice.
Jeez, that's big.
It's a big call.
It's a big surprise as well. He's gone Luke Hodge as a vice captain, and no Shannon Hearn either.
No,
that's big. Obviously doesn't respect leadership.
I like it from you, VK, though.
You got a little bit of ambition, don't you? Yeah, you do.
I've got a quick one.
What'd you say, Jeddah?
Quick one for everyone.
You love your mentions.
Mention.
Quick one for everyone here. Currently looking at it right now, Sean Burgoyne has got 35 final appearances, which is the most of any player currently. He's only 2 behind the all-time leader in Michael Tuck, which also played for Hawthorn. Do we think Sean Burgoyne will overtake Michael Tuck? He needs 2 more to tie, 3 more to take over. What do we reckon?
Appearances?
Yes.
Yeah, is that games or
no,
years?
Finals appearances.
No,
so he's going to play 2 more.
2 more years
to draw, though. I think he'll draw, but I don't think he'll take over. I think he'll draw, but he won't take over.
I reckon he's pushing it. I reckon he might be drop 1 short. I reckon he's only got a season left in him or so.
Yeah, so what you reckon, Hawthorn out?
I reckon
in the finals.
Hawthorn will let him down.
I reckon they'll have a great year this year. The Hawks.
I reckon he can make it this year, but I reckon if he keeps playing 1, 2, 3 more seasons, I reckon 1 season, Hawks might let him down. They finish 9th or 10th.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't see him playing another season after this one. You never know. Of course, he wants to keep playing. Still, one of the highest in the 2K time trial.
It's pretty impressive at his age.
Right, so we can go through our midfielders now. Of course, it's hard to put someone on the wing and on the ball, so they're all, I guess, interchangeable. I'll start mine off first. I've got Scott Pendlebury on the first wing. Nothing really surprising about that, with 28.4 disposals average, 12 of them being contested. Did kick a big 135 goals in the decade, with having 5.5 tackles. And did have 173 Brownlow votes as well, which was very impressive. Unfortunately, still hasn't got that Brownlow. I don't think he will ever get that Brownlow, but definitely will go down as one of the best players to not win a Brownlow. He also did have 6 All-Australians in this time, 1 premiership and 5 BNFs. And then got Nat Fyfe, pretty simple again, with 25.7 touches, 14 and a half of them being contested. Has kicked more goals than Pendlebury, with 148 goals being kicked. And then 4.5 marks with 4 tackles. He's actually surprisingly got 1 more Brownlow vote than Pendlebury, with 174.
That's interesting.
So I guess it shows how good Pendlebury has been consistently, considering Fyfe's got 2 Brownlows and has got only 1 more Brownlow vote than him. Of course, Fyfe's also got the 3 All-Australians and the 3 BNFs. And then my final wingman will be Dustin Martin, with 25.4 disposals, 10 of them being contested. Has kicked a stupid amount of goals for a midfielder and 251 goals. Of course, he does push up a little bit and, does get a lot of junk time goals, but you know what? Still a good player. Has the 4 marks, there's 3 tackles, 176 Brownlow votes. So all Pendlebury, Fyfe and Martin are all 3 Brownlow votes of each other, which I thought was very interesting. And of course, he's got, of course, he's got 3 All-Australians, 2 premierships, 2 Norm Smiths, the Brownlow, and 2 best and fairest. So, Jetta, you want to take us to your midfield?
Okay, so the first wingman I've gone with Dangerfield. Obviously playing the midfield, but there's a lot of good midfielders, so one of them's got to get pushed out to the wing. 7-time All-Australian, averaging 25 disposals and kicked 260 goals, so not much else to say. Obviously, that Brownlow as well. And then in the mid, Nat Fyfe, winning his second Brownlow this year, 3-time All-Australian, probably carrying a Freo team a lot to even finish that high that they do. And then on my other wing, I've got vice-captain Scott Pendlebury. Tiny bit biased, but he's our captain. Obviously one of the best players to not win a Brownlow. I think he's second behind Selwood with votes not to win a Brownlow. 6-time All-Australian, 5 times Collingwood BNF. Obviously premiership winner with the Norm Smith, and leading disposal getter for the decade.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Go Matho, what are your midfield looking like?
Very similar to old mate Jetta. We got Dane Swan out on the wing.
Oh, okay, yep.
Like everyone, you can't really fit a midfielder perfectly on the wing, but slot Dane Swan in out there. Patrick Dangerfield in the guts. Both at Adelaide and Geelong. He's been a superstar. And then my vice captain as well is Jetta, Scott Pendlebury on the other wing. And the stats speak for itself. So,
VK, your midfield. You said before you had an interesting choice for your midfield, so definitely intrigued to hear it.
I wouldn't say interesting choice as the player, but what I've done, you'll hear it. So we start on the wing with Swanee, Brownlow medal winner this decade, 4-time All-Australian, won a premiership, 2 Anzac Day medals, and averaged 30 disposals a game. That's a pretty easy pick for me, I think. Swanee's been pretty amazing throughout this decade. In the middle, I've got Ablett. Ablett, for me, is arguably the best player we've seen in the past 10 to 20 years in the AFL. In this decade alone, he has won a Brownlow medal, 4 All-Australians and 4 Best and Fairest awards, and has kicked 218 goals, which is a very impressive stat, seeing as he played a lot in the midfield. And I finish it off with Pendles, but Pendles is actually my captain of this team.
Jeez.
So that's where the captain position was going. In my opinion, Pendles has been the most consistent performer of this past decade. Obviously, as I said before, 6 Best and Fairest, 6 All-Australians, 3 Anzac Day medals, which is impressive, and a premiership in 2010, where he took home the Norm Smith medal for his performance. So yeah, I'm very happy with that midfield.
Strong midfield, of course. So yeah, it looks like we'll have to move to our half forwards. Matho, you'd like to take us to your half forwards?
So we've got Robbie Gray on the half forward flank. So big horse now, Ben Horsey. Shout out to my man Horsey. Gave me the tip this morning. He was on the bench, and I just had to slide him in there. I reckon just for old mate Horse, just to get him in there. It's been a rock in the forward line for Port Adelaide. Week in, week out, I reckon. Throw him in the midfield as well, does wonders for him. Centre half forward. Unfortunately, he just had the news that he's done his string again. Franklin. I don't know if that bloke will play an AFL game again, to be completely honest with you. He keeps injuring himself.
You never know. Hopefully he does.
Touch wood, hopefully he does. He's a absolute freak of nature. And then on the other half forward flank, couldn't slot him into the full forward or half forward, but Jack Rewalt, just another tall timber down there.
Definitely fair enough. Strong team. Jeddah, what is your half forward flank looking like?
So forward line starts off with Dustin Martin,
Mm-hmm.
One of the midfielders that plays a lot down forward, dominates, averages 25 disposals, kicked 250 goals. You can't complain. 2-time premiership player, 2 Norm Smith, Brownlow, MVP, 2 Tigers BNF. So can't really complain about that. And then I've got Robbie Gray, 4-time All-Australian, averages 21 disposals and 266 goals. And then my centre half forward, obviously, Buddy, 7-time All-Australian, 3-time Coleman's, kicked 639 goals.
Was that an average of 266 goals?
Yeah, I'm thinking that's a lot of goals.
Jesus.
It's kicking well that year. Kicking well the whole decade.
He's kicked straight.
He's a pretty accurate kicker, yeah.
No, I said average 21 disposals and kicked 266 goals.
Oh, my God.
Right. Got to be confused then.
Right. VK, what's your half forward flank looking like?
So mine starts with Martin, just as Jeddah. Martin in 2017 had the best year that I've ever witnessed from a single player, winning the premiership with Richmond, winning the Norman Smith medal, and win the Brownlow medal. The perfect year.
Treble.
Yep. And then I got Franklin again. In my opinion, at his best, Franklin is the best player I've ever witnessed in my lifetime. Unstoppable. No one can stop him. The most goals kicked in the last decade, 3 Coleman medals, 7 All-Australians. Just unstoppable when he's not injured. And my other half forward, my first pick, which is debatable, like you could definitely, it's definitely not a lock in. Luke Bruce from Hawthorn.
I like that.
Luke was a part of the 3-peat Hawks side and played a huge role in their success with his straight goal kicking. 2-time Australian, being Hawks leading goal kicker, 2018, 2019. Bruce is such a small player, but players never seem to be able to tackle him. And I reckon he's a very underrated player and deserves to be in this spot. 3 premierships, of course, as well.
Are you just trying to get on Jacko's good side or something by putting all the Hawthorn players in, mate?
Hawthorn have been the best team in this decade. You can't really complain much about having all the Hawthorn players in there. Yeah.
Josh, you said Buddy, best player you've seen ever, but Gary Ablett, best player of the decade.
Yeah. No.
No, I guess Buddy's
No. Franklin.
I'm a tad confused.
No. Franklin at his best when every single player in the AFL playing their best, he's the best player I've ever seen. But Ablett over the decade has been the best player.
I reckon every podcast, mate, I reckon you say that a different player each time is the best player you've ever witnessed.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Quote VK. I reckon next podcast we got to quote VK, and if he says it, $5 into the tin for saying best player I've witnessed. And if it's different, Buddy Franklin, $5 in the tin.
Yeah, that's definitely fair enough. I'll go through my half forwards. Very similar with VK. Also, I've got Luke Bruce in there. You know, averaging the 14.7 disposals, did kick 395 goals with the 4 tackles and the 3.4 marks. Did have the 25 Brownlow votes, the 2 All-Australians, and those 3 premierships, as VK said before. And also, I do agree with him. I think he'd probably be the second small bloke or second hardest small bloke to tackle behind Dustin Martin. Bruce seems to slip and slide out of every single tackle he gets. So also got Buddy, of course. You know, if you don't have Buddy, you've got something wrong with you. Of course, got the 639 goals this year. Big 127 Brownlow votes with the 7 All-Australians, those 7 Colemans. And, you know, only got that 1 premiership. Could he have had 3 if he stayed at Hawthorn? We'll never know, but it'd definitely be a good one to talk about in the future. And also got on the half-forward flank is Cyril Rioli. Of course, my favourite player that doesn't play for Brisbane, with the 14.5 average disposals, the 230 goals, with the 3.3 marks, the 4.4 tackles. Also has 40 Brownlow votes for those 3 All-Australians, those 3 premierships, and of course that Norm Smith. Jeddah, what is your full forwards now looking like then?
So it starts off with Cyril. Obviously, you just talked about him. Can't really not have him in there. And then I've also got Jack Riewoldt. 577 goals, 3 Colemans, 3 All-Australians. Obviously, Richmond B&F winner as well. And then I don't think you can miss this bloke out, Josh Kennedy.
Yep.
3-time All-Australian, 2-time Coleman medalist.
Fair enough then. Yeah, Matho, what's your one?
Full forward, we've got Dustin Martin in the forward pocket. Everyone's really had him somewhere in the side, so won't go into the stats. The name speaks for itself. The AFL's golden boy, Dusty Martin.
Of course.
Josh J. Kennedy at full forward. Like Jada just said, 2-time Coleman medalist. And Cyril Rioli in the other forward pocket. I think the pick between Rioli and Betts just makes him slide in there nicely.
Yeah, that's definitely fair enough. VK?
So I start off with Rioli. It wasn't a debate between Betts and Rioli for me. It was Rioli straight in. Riewoldt, Jack, full forward. He's been very consistent over this decade. Has kicked lots of goals for Richmond when they've been good and bad. 3-time Coleman medal winner. 3-time All-Australian selection. And then, interesting one. It's actually my 5th Hawks pick so far. So continuing with the Hawks flavour. And it's going to be my 5 out of 6 Hawthorn players for this team. It's Jared Ruffhead at forward pocket. It was between him and Betts for this position. And Ruffy just edged it, mainly due to his premiership wins with the 3 flags with the Hawks. Also a Coleman medal winner. I think a lot of people forget about that in 2013.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, did come back from having cancer, so...
Yeah, he's
an
absolute legend.
You know, exactly. You can't not like the man. So I've got my forward, got the same as what most people got with Jack Riewoldt in the first forward pocket, 577 goals, the 3 All-Australians, those 3 Coleman medals as well. Got the 47 Brownlow votes, so, it's not too bad, not great either. Of course, 2 premierships and those 2 B&Fs. Also did average 5.7 marks, which I thought was pretty good, the exact same as Buddy. So I thought that was interesting. And then also full forward, got Josh Kennedy in, as I think most people does. Got 562 goals this year, with 76 Brownlow votes. Those 2 All-Australians, the 2 Colemans, and that 1 premiership. And then, even though I seriously hate the bloke, seriously do hate him, you have got Eddie Betts in my forward pocket. So, of course, has got 492 goals with 3.1 marks, 3.1 tackles. Has got the same amount of Brownlow votes as Rioli. They both got the 40
That's interesting.
Votes. They both also got 3 All-Australians, but of course Rioli's got those 3 premiership, which makes him a much superior player.
How can you hate Eddie Betts? He's a lovable man. He's a lovable man.
I don't like him. He's up there with players I don't like.
Jacko hates players out from Adelaide. They just hates them.
Adelaide.
He just hates them all.
Adelaide, mate.
No, if he played at Port Adelaide, then he would be number 1 most hated player. Because it's Adelaide.
He's not from Adelaide anymore. He's just Carlton now.
Yeah, but, he's still an Adelaide player.
Yeah, but,
He's skipped up.
Wake up to yourself, VK.
You wake up.
Right. Now we'll move on to our followers. I'll kick us off. I think Ruckman, as most of you would probably agree, was probably the hardest choice to pick out of everyone.
Yeah,
I mean, there was
definitely.
probably two or three players that could have gone in. I decided to go with Big Maxi Gawn because he did average the 35 and a half hit-outs a game with 14 touches. There's 58 goals as well with the 43 Brownlow votes, those 3 All-Australians and those 3 BNFs. Then I've got Gary Ablett, of course, be the best player of the decade. He's got averaging 29 disposals, 219 goals with 5.6 tackles, 3.1 marks, and 175 Brownlow votes, which, you know, as I said before, the Pendlebury, Fife, Martin, they all are within, 4 or 5 Brownlow votes of each other, which is pretty crazy to think about. Also got the 5 All-Australians, the 1 Brownlow, and the 4 BNFs. Then my final one is Paddy Dangerfield with 25.1 disposals average, 16 of them being contested with 261 goals. So, you know, of course, still kicking a lot of goals while playing midfield, more than Dustin Martin as well, which I thought was interesting. We've also got 4.2 tackles, the 4.1 marks, and the 7 All-Australians, the 1 Brownlow, the 3 BNFs. And I thought this was the big one here. He's got 209 Brownlow votes. So that's, you know, 30 or so more than every other of the top players or all the other top midfielders. So, yeah, that's my team of the decade, or I guess the team that starts. Matho, what is your one looking like to finish us off?
Maxi Gawn as well. I think the ruckman was a hard pick, like you said. Between Brodie Grundy and Max Gawn right now, you'd take Brodie Grundy, but I think overall for the decade, I think Max Gawn gets the edge over him.
Yeah.
The Ruck Rover, Nat Fife. Like you mentioned, Jacko, all these stats just before. Can't speak for itself. And then Gary Ablett Jr. as well. He'll sit there nicely at the Rover position.
That's definitely fair enough. Jeddah, what is your midfield looking like? Or the followers?
So I've also got Max Gawn, dominant ruckman. One of the big stats that I looked at was 11 and a half hit-outs to advantage, the averages.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Which is at least 2 more than any other ruckman I was looking at.
Jesus.
We'll go... next is Ablett. Can't really say much else about him except won a Brownlow at a team that was really struggling, the Gold Coast, which a lot of people say, I don't reckon he'll win a Brownlow to a lot of players because they're playing at really bad teams. But if you're a good, probably the best player in the last decade, you can do it. And then I'll finish it off with Swanee. Obviously, Brownlow, full-time All-Australian, averaged 31 disposals, kicked 120 goals.
That's fair enough then. So, VK, what is your followers look like?
My 2-1 ballers are Fife and Dangerfield. Nothing really said about them. They're pretty self-explanatory. But my ruckman, interesting. For me, the ruckman position was comfortably the hardest decision to pick. I had players like Gawn and Elisha Sanderlands, who I was considering. And I never thought I'd have a North Melbourne player in the team. But Toddy Goldstein starts as my ruckman. For me, the most consistently good ruckman of this decade. Made the All-Australian team once in 2015, averaged around 33 hit-outs per season. I reckon Goldstein's the one for me.
That's fair enough. And,
definitely thought about.
Yeah. You know, plays for a scumbag club.
He does. It was tough to put him in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyone who plays for North, it's pretty tough.
Yeah. It's the reason why I've got no Port Adelaide players in my team. Scumbags. So now we can move to our...
They think highly of you as well, Jacko.
Oh, yeah, of course. If any of them listen to it, I don't want to speak to you. I don't like any of you. So, yeah. Except for maybe Tom Rockcliffe. Is, met him once, which is pretty cool.
What about Dill Williams from White
Dill Williams? He hasn't played a game yet.
So
What about Jack Watts?
Yeah.
Jack Watts, good.
Oh, mate, Jack.
I hate Jack Watts.
Best number 1 draft. The best number 1 draft.
He is pretty good. He's a very, very talented player. So I guess we can go to our bench now. I'll just go through my bench really quickly. Sam Mitchell, Dane Swan, Josh Kennedy from Sydney, and me vice captain who is sitting on the bench, Joel Selwood. So, VK, what's your bench looking like?
All right, so Josh Kennedy from West Coast. Betts is on the bench. Sam Mitchell. And this is going to be extremely controversial here.
Oh, God, here we go.
No Joel Selwood in the team.
No Joel Selwood.
Joel Selwood, maybe a little bit. I'm not usually very biased, but maybe a little bit of bias coming in. I absolutely hate his guys. All he does is duck, but we're going to get that. We'll get onto that another day. And probably the most controversial Brownlow medal winner ever in 2014 from the West Coast Eagles, Matt Priddis fills out.
Matt Priddis in your team of the day.
Matt Priddis makes it for me.
That is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
That is worse than Sam Doherty making the
Matt Priddis never got the recognition he deserved until he won that.
He never got the recognition.
Never got that recognition. He is a machine. Exactly. He ran that West Coast midfield. Run it. 27 disposals a game, and listen to this: 7 tackles. The tackling ability and defensive game as a midfielder is why I rate him so highly. Always rate a defensive-minded mid. Matty Priddis, welcome. He's on the bench.
All right, on to Jeddah. Let's move on to Jeddah. Jeddah, who's your bench?
What's your bench?
Just need to collect my thoughts after that monstrosity.
That's fair enough.
That's a good pick. That is a good pick.
First off, I have obviously Josh Kennedy from Sydney, Sam Mitchell, and the player that Josh should have picked, Joel Selwood. Most votes without a Brownlow, and definitely probably 10 times better than Matt Priddis.
Yeah, probably.
And my last player on the bench, I've gone on. If he didn't have the last 2 seasons he had, he would not be in here. But I've gone with Brodie Grundy.
Oh, that's big.
That's interesting. Matt Priddis had a better decade than Brodie Grundy. Come on.
2-time All-Australian. Collingwood BNF twice. Averages 31 hitouts. 17 disposals and 9 hitouts to advantage.
It's fair enough then.
How's that fair enough? And Matt Priddis is not fair enough. That's what I want to know.
Because he's probably averages the same amount of disposals.
He's had 3 good years.
Yeah, Matt Priddis made all
31 disposals.
Yeah, that's beside the point. Brownlow medal winner. I just don't think he gets the recognition he deserves.
I've gone on average for the whole decade, and he probably nearly averages more than Matt Priddis disposal-wise.
It's questionable. How much is he average?
17.
Yeah, Matt Priddis averages 10 more disposals, so I don't know about that.
He got more All-Australians in 2 years than Matt Priddis did for his whole career.
Priddis was robbed.
He was robbed. And the big one about the big one about Grundy, the big award about Grundy is he has won the Herald Sun Player of the Year.
That is massive.
That's fair enough then.
Oh, I may have to change mine now. Get rid of Priddis.
And that's why he made my team.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah, that's big. Who needs a Brownlow when you get recognised by the blokes out of Herald Sun?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Matt, have you said your ones?
No, so my bench, we'll start off with Josh P. Kennedy from the Sydney Swans. Very, very consistent player. Sam Mitchell as well. We'll get Sam Mitchell in there. And my mate Joel Selwood, actually just been texting him last night, just wishing him a happy birthday, and he said, thanks, boys.
I will confirm that.
The front.
Really? That's fair enough then.
We might have to give him a text, get him on for a podcast.
Get him on.
I reckon he'd join, I reckon.
I don't want to hear him. Don't get him on.
Still.
All right, VK. You can go do a podcast with you can go do a podcast.
Yeah, me and Matty Priddis will go have a combo, and you can talk to Joel Selwood.
Okay, you realise Matt Priddis only won 1 BNF for West Coast. There's only 1 year he was actually the best player at their club. That's
beside the point. How many best and fairest does Cyril win?
He's not that type of player.
That's what I'm saying, though. That is what I'm saying. It's not all about the accolades. It's not all about that.
So what is it about then? What has Matt Priddis done to it?
Just consistently good, running their midfield. Just a very underrated player. He ran it.
And then, we'll just leave that Matt Priddis conversation for a sec, because I think that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
He's a Brownlow medal winner.
He didn't deserve
I'd have to
win
make
the
4
Brownlow.
teams to get him in.
No, he's the second worst player to ever win a Brownlow.
Don't dog Adam Cooney. Don't talk to man.
I'm talking to Adam Penny right now.
Essendon legend. Leave him alone.
And the last player on my bench, your main man, Jacko, Eddie Betts. Slots in nicely.
That's fair enough.
That's very controversial, Lockie.
Not having any bets.
Yeah.
Why? I've got any bets.
Very overrated. Very overrated player, I believe.
You
Really?
believe him?
Yeah. Very overrated.
That's fair enough then.
Radio, mate.
All right, so we'll have to end the podcast here. Make sure you subscribe to the JLJ podcast. Follow us on our new TikTok account where we post, little snippets of every podcast. Make sure you go follow the Instagram account as well, so you get a bit of behind the scenes of how we do everything around here. Make sure you go check out Jeddah on Instagram. Good bloke. I'm sure we'll have him back in the future. And yeah, anyone else got anything else to say, boys?
Matt Prittis deserves more recognition. That's all I'm going to leave it at today. Thanks, everyone, for listening.
All right. See you later, boys. See ya.
Lost for words.
See ya.
See you later.